Welcome to another episode of the Ultimate Freedom Teachings video series.
Robert here. Welcome to another episode of Brutally Honest Tuesdays. And before we get into the actual content, I need to say something first because it's very, very, very important. Ready? This is one of my favorite shirts. And I'm wearing it today because I love this shirt. I got it on one of my many trips to Sedona. And there's something very unique about it that I find very inspiring, and it also just reminds me of Sedona. So now, having shared that very important point, let's go into the content for today. This is episode 4 of Brutally Honest Tuesdays, and episode 2 and 3 and this episode are kind of a trilogy. They kind of point at and come at the same kind of a thing from different angles. And so it starts out with the battle cry in self-help, success teachings, personal development, certain aspects of spiritual development, but not all. The battle cry is, you have unlimited power and you can create anything you want, and what you just need to do is get very clear on what you want, be as specific as possible, and then use da-da-da-da technique to try to manifest it, attract it, whatever the word or the system is. So, I've addressed the issue of, do you really have unlimited power or not, in a previous episode. Now I want to push on a little bit the whole thing of get clear on what you really want. Because when I first started down this path myself, I had no problem with that. If somebody said, get clear on what you really want and get very specific, when it came to business or making money or certain projects that I was working on, or if there was a body thing going on, it was very easy for me to do that. There were a lot of things about how to attract your soulmate, how to find the perfect man or woman to be in a relationship with, and they would tell you to be very, very specific. And I always had a bit of a block on that, which leads us to where we're going to go with all of this, which is that I thought to myself, I don't care. In my case, I was interested in a woman. I didn't care how tall she was. I had certain preferences about body type in shape that I tend to like, and I don't care what her job is, and there's certain things about personality, but anytime I was supposed to write these very specific things, I always had a bit of a block because I thought two things. One, I really don't want to limit it, and two, I don't really know. I don't really know, which is where we're going with all of this. But in the beginning, it was real simple. I could write my lists, I could get very specific on these pictures, whatever of these things that I wanted to produce. But as my journey continued, and as I discovered what I call the Phase 2 Busting Loose Teachings, and I started using those 4 tools, and if you don't know about that, you'll see a link on your page right now on the video, robertscheinfeld.com/training. Go to that page, identify yourself as new, and there's a training, a free email and video training that'll go much more deeply into this. But when I discovered, or the Phase 2 Busting Loose Teachings were revealed to me, would be more accurate on the 4 tools, and I used them. And in my language, I knocked out a lot of cloud cover that was blocking me from experiencing the sun that I use as a metaphor to represent all the stuff that I really want. There's more about that in that free training. I began to struggle with this all the time because what became so clear to me is, and I don't say this, because I was being judgmental or harsh or negative or attacking or criticizing of myself. What became so clear to me at an experiential level is, what the hell do I know? How do I know what would really be best for me? How do I know what would really make me happy? What would really be fulfilling? How do I know what the best job or career or relationship or this or that would be best for me? I was also starting to see, which I talked about in the previous episodes, and I talk about in the free trainings and in the teachings that I share, that I wasn't driving the bus, that I wasn't really the creative force shaping what was happening to me anyway. So what did my opinion matter anyway if I wasn't the author, if I wasn't driving the bus? But I also realized beyond that, get specific, I don't know. If I'm brutally honest, I don't know the specifics of what would really float my boat. And you've probably had the kind of experience yourself that I'm about to talk about here. You got clear on one thing or many one things that you wanted to produce in your life. And you set on the path and you used whatever tools or techniques or strategies or coaches or whatever, and you marched relentlessly over whatever time frame to getting that particular thing, and then you got it. And when you actually experienced what you'd worked so hard for and really wanted so much, it either wasn't what you thought it would be, it wasn't as fun, it wasn't as exhilarating, it wasn't as freeing, it didn't make you happy, whatever it is. There's a million different ways we can language that. Or there was a brief moment of exhilaration. I remember, for example, when I was a kid and I wanted to be a writer. I thought I was going to be a fiction writer, but I wanted to be a writer. And at that time, the most prestigious thing that could happen is for you to be a New York Times best-selling author. That was the biggie. And so I had a dream about that. And when my book, Busting Loose from the Money Game, hit the New York Times bestseller list, and I wasn't expecting it, and I was in my kitchen, and the phone rang, and my wife at the time answered it, and she said, "Hey, it's Richard." Richard was my editor at the New York Publisher, and said, "Hey, you just hit the New York Times bestseller list." And I had a moment of wow, and this amazing excitement inside of me, and I let out a whoop, you know, and and how long do you think that lasted? The big thing, you know, maybe a minute, and then it rippled out for a few days. I basked in the glow of it, and then ultimately, okay. And if I hit the New York Times list again, which I didn't, but if I did, it wouldn't have been any big deal. It was 20 years or something, 30 years or something from that dream when I was a kid to it happening. And then there was like a minute of this amazing, and then there was a slight glow in it for a while, and that was it. That's what tends to happen, and there's story after story after story. In the business world of somebody that works their ass off and then sells their company and gets all this money where they can do anything, and they buy the beautiful house they always wanted, they live in the neighborhood that they wanted, they buy this stuff and that stuff, and they do these things, and they're free from all the limits and restrictions and pressures of day-to-day life, and then they go into a deep depression because it isn't what they thought it would be. So anyway, I'm rambling, but odds are you've had that experience. And I had that experience so many times, where I really wanted something and I worked really hard for it, and then I got it, and then there was an emptiness or a very brief joy to it, and then it was, okay, what's next? And what's the new thing that I'm going to target and work towards? And then I'd get to that, and there'd be an emptiness or a very brief little blip of whatever. And the same stuff that if you know my story, and if you don't, you'll find out by taking those free trainings. You'll see the link on the screen again now for that. That happened to me so many times that it fueled this thing that I'm talking to you about here, which is, what the hell do I know? I'm not driving the bus. It's not up to me. I'm not the one who's actually creating my reality. It's who I really am, what I now call true creative essence from behind the scenes, level 1. And level 2, even if I forget that for a moment, what the hell do I know? I don't know what my mission or purpose is. I don't know how this particular scene or series of scenes in my story are meant to support that. What do I know? How do I know what the best woman is for me to be in a relationship with, and how long I'm supposed to be with her before it ends or I meet somebody else, or what challenges? What do I know? I mean, if somebody forced me to, I could make a list of things that were in my mind. But I got to the point of, again, I'm not driving the bus, and I had absolute certainty of that at an experiential level from knocking out so much cloud cover. If you don't know what that means, take the free training. You'll find out what that means. And I also knew that I'd been wrong so many times, and I also just was starting to get to the point where I would be asked to get real specific on what I wanted, and I just didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't have the specifics, or if a bunch of specifics came in, I'd look at that and I'd say, all right, but I don't know if that's part of my mission, my purpose, my destiny. I don't know if that would really make me happy. I don't know if it would really give me what I think it would give me. The other piece that revealed itself to me on this journey is this. If somebody comes to you, and it's an exercise in a workshop, or it's an exercise in a book, or a video course, or an online course, or whatever, and they say, set a goal for yourself, something you really want to have in your life, and get very, very specific on what it is that you want. And let's say that they gave you a piece of paper with a bunch of lines, and you filled in the lines with these specific things that you wanted. Where did those things come from? How do you know you want that? We already talked about how do you know it would make you happy. Where do they come from? If you're brutally honest, what actually happened is somebody told you, set a goal, get very specific, And then in essence, bear with the language, you watched what was happening in your mind. And what appeared in your mind is, out of nowhere, out of some mysterious blackness of inner space, as I call it, thoughts popped into your mind. I would like this. And then it was okay, get specific. And in a sense, it happens really fast a lot of the time, or sometimes it doesn't. Then you waited to see what popped into your mind about the specifics. And those specifics popped out of nowhere, out of some mysterious nowhere into your mind. You grabbed onto them and said, oh, those are the specifics of what I really want. Where does it come from? Well, the honest truth is, I don't know. You don't know. If you're brutally honest, they popped into your mind. Now, if we try to analyze it, we go into psychology and other things that we know, well, where did they come from? They came from the family you grew up in and the things that you saw and the movies you've seen and the music you've listened to and the lyrics and the media and what your friends have said and the societal pressures in whatever part of the world you live in. And it's shaped by, it's called programming or conditioning, different kinds of things in psychology and self-help. And you get built in a unique way as a unique character, is the language that I use as you're growing up. And you have preferences and biases and wants that have been built into you from your experiences. But the reality is, if you look at it, the thing that you picked, here's what I want to pump through this manifestation, success, self-help, magic technique. Here's the thing I want, and here are the specifics. It all popped out of nowhere into your thoughts. You accepted it as accurate and real, but it popped out of nowhere into your mind. Watch next time you do an exercise like this. Verify it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. These are the things I began to see that began to undercut this whole thing. And then the kicker, the final piece in all of this, is that when I was going through one of these crazy stages that ultimately led to me experiencing with a capital E to a very deep degree the things that I would transform my life and that I'd later teach and share, this other piece revealed itself. And the other piece was this. I realized all this stuff. I thought I wanted this with these specifics. Or I thought I wanted this, but I didn't have the specifics. Because there are other, I'm sure you've experienced them, self-help teachings that say, get clear on what it is that you want, but let the universe make up the details for how it comes to you and how it manifests. Again, a lot of these systems contradict each other. But I tried getting clear on just what I wanted, and then the details at certain points on my journey, and then just what I wanted, leave the details up to spirit, the universe, whatever. Getting some of them, but there was emptiness, not getting so many of them, and then ultimately seeing all these things. I'm not driving the bus. How do I know? I've been wrong so many times. Where are these things really coming from anyway? They're really just popping into my mind out of some mysterious nowhere, and I don't know what that's all about or where it comes from. I just think I hijack those things and say, oh, that's what I want, and but reality is it just popped into my mind. All this stuff started to happen, and then as a result of all of this, what happened in my story is I stopped. I stopped making lists, and I stopped trying to produce particular results. And I stopped trying to drive the bus anywhere, even though I knew I wasn't. I still was trying to for a long time, even though I knew I wasn't. That was part of my journey for reasons I talk about in the teachings. And when I stopped trying to produce particular results, which, by the way, for me, maybe for you too, was exhausting and frustrating and difficult. Which technique, how to do it, which thing to pump through it, what to do if it's not working, all this kind of stuff was exhausting and frustrating to me. When I stopped all of that, all the exhaustion disappeared, all the frustrating disappeared, all the craziness that was happening disappeared, and then what I noticed is all these amazing things started to happen. And most of them, some of them were things that at one point in my life I was aware of the fact that I wanted, but most of them were things I'd never thought about, I'd never envisioned, I'd never targeted, I'd never tried to produce using a particular technique, and they were awesome. There wasn't the emptiness that I had before. There was, this is great, I love this. And there was fun, and there was joy, and there was whatever you want to call it, fulfillment. There's a term that I came up with called creative ecstasy, which is a certain experience of expressing creatively, which is one of my favorite things to do. And there was this amazing stuff, but it wasn't coming from a list. It wasn't coming from, I want to produce this. It wasn't get specific on exactly what you want, and then use this technique and visualize every day, or stare at your vision board, or do this or do that, or whatever the techniques were. There was no technique, no method, no anything. I wasn't trying to produce any particular result. And day after day after day after day, these amazing things were happening on their own. And I thought, wow, this is cool. I'm not exhausted. I'm not frustrating. I'm not trying to drive the bus. I'm not trying to decide all these things. I'm just kind of relaxing into the story, which, by the way, words don't serve. That's way too general for the magic of what it really is, but that's what ultimate freedom is about. Again, words don't serve, but it's relaxing into the ride, letting the ride go where it goes, and enjoying everything that manifests, no matter what it is. And sometimes, yes, you still have goals, and you still have, I want to do this and I want to do that. It's different for all of us. But this radically different experience happened, and ultimately the combination of all these things I'm talking about to you dynamited this whole thing in my story. And from that moment, I have never set goals or set targets or set intentions or tried to produce particular outcomes, and certainly didn't use any techniques to do it. And yet, amazing thing after amazing thing after amazing thing has happened. My life is so much more enjoyable. I talk a lot about what all of this was like, including how it changed and where I ended up in the free training. You'll see the link on the video again right now. I invite you to register for it. You'll find out a lot more about all of this. But it changed radically at an experiential level, not because I went to a seminar and somebody said, you're not driving the bus, you don't know what you want, stop trying to produce results. That's not what happened. It just happened. And as I was experiencing all these things and seeing the truth of all these things, and then ultimately I was aware that I stopped trying to produce the results, and then these amazing things, far better than it ever happened before when I wasn't trying. All of this combined to open a gateway to a radically different way of living that I ultimately now call ultimate freedom. So, those are my drops in the pond for this week. This is my Brutally Honest Tuesday for this week. This is the third kind of in the trilogy that Episode 2, 3, and 4, which this is, have been building to take the same kind of a thing and coming at it from different angles. If you liked what you saw here, if you feel that you benefited and this was valuable, even just to shake somebody up, I ask you to share the love, however you love to do that. Leave a comment below. Love it, hate it, don't know what to think, whatever. I'm an idiot, doesn't matter. I invite you to leave a comment, join a conversation, start a conversation. Love to know your thoughts and feelings about this. And on that note, I'll say bye-bye for now until we next connect, however we connect, but definitely, hopefully, through the next Brutally Honest Tuesday. Bye-bye for now.
If you'd like to get more information on what you just discovered, go ahead and click on the Learn More button that you'll see appearing in a few seconds.